Ashton Jeanty, one of the greatest rushing seasons in NCAA history. Jeanty was the guy to watch every Saturday all season. He led Boise State to an incredible season and the number 3 seed in the college football playoff. He was simply unstoppable. Whether it was against Georgia Southern, UNLV, or Oregon, Jeanty dominated. The Broncos came up short against Penn State, and Jeanty did have his worst performance of the season. He still rushed for 104 yards and carried the ball 30 times. It was a season for the books, and Jeanty now sits at second all-time for rushing yards in a season with 2,601. He got close, but he finished 27 yards behind Barry Sanders for the record. Even against mostly Mountain West opponents, it was a truly incredible campaign for Jeanty regardless, and it will be remembered for a long time. Ashton Jeanty played 14 games and averaged 7 yards per carry on 374 touches. He scored 29 touchdowns and caught 23 passes for 138 yards and a touchdown. All season, it was clear Jeanty had a shot at the season rushing record and needed 131 yards against Penn State in the college football playoff quarterfinals, but came up just short as the Broncos lost 31-14 in the Fiesta Bowl. He was only the second 100-yard rusher Penn State allowed all season. Woody Marks rushed for 111 yards for USC on October 12th. There are plenty of reasons to shortchange the success Jeanty had, like the lack of competition in the Mountain West, but even against the best, he was unstoppable. Against eventual number 1 Oregon on September 8th, he had 192 yards and 3 touchdowns. The week before, Jeanty quickly got off to a hot start to the season, rushing for a season-high 267 yards and 6 touchdowns on 20 carries against Georgia Southern. Against Portland State, he only played a half, rushing for 127 yards on 11 carries. It was the only time he didn't score a touchdown before facing Penn State. Jeanty rushed for over 200 yards against Georgia Southern, Washington State, Hawaii, Nevada, Oregon State, and UNLV. He had 3 or more touchdowns versus Georgia Southern, Oregon, Washington State, Utah State, Nevada, and San Jose State. It didn't matter when the box was stacked. Ashton Jeanty still couldn't be stopped. There is a reason why Jeanty finished second for the Heisman Trophy to Travis Hunter. It was the closest Heisman race in 15 years. Hunter was well-deserved. He was a top cornerback and an elite wide receiver playing both ways. Jeanty did play in the group of 5, but he did something Hunter and Shedeur Sanders didn't. He got to the college football playoff and got the number 3 seed with a bye. It was a heck of a season. Jeanty was the main reason why Boise State made the CFP. Maddox Madsen had a fantastic season at quarterback for the Broncos. He passed for 3,018 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions while rushing for 221 yards and 5 touchdowns. Madsen playing well really helped Jeanty succeed and vice versa. With how dominant Ashton Jeanty was at Boise State, it's a shock. He was only a 3-star recruit, but it does make sense. He moved a lot because his dad was in the Navy. He was born in Jacksonville, Florida, and played football for the first time in Chesapeake, Virginia. Shout out to the 757. Early high school, he lived in Naples, Italy, and went to school there. He played quarterback for 2 games as a freshman before he was switched to running back, and the rest is history. He ran for over 1,200 yards and 21 touchdowns over 6 games. Jeanty then returned to the States and played at Lone Star in Frisco, Texas. As a senior, he rushed for 1,843 yards and 41 touchdowns. He didn't have a ton of offers. It probably didn't help he was only 5'9", 195 pounds. He was offered by the service academies and a couple of Ivy League schools in addition to Cal, Kansas, Louisiana, Tulane, and Tulsa, among some others. For 2 seasons, Jeanty split carries with George Holani. As a freshman, Jeanty had 156 carries for 821 yards and 7 touchdowns in 14 games with 14 receptions for 155 yards. The Broncos went 10-4 and lost in the Mountain West Championship to Fresno State before beating North Texas in the Frisco Bowl. As a sophomore, Jeanty was the Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year after he had 220 carries for 1,347 yards and 14 touchdowns in 12 games. He had a bigger role in the passing game, 43 receptions for 569 yards and 5 touchdowns. He really broke out, but it was a messy season for Boise State. Head coach Andy Avalos was fired after a 5-5 start, and Spencer Danielson was named the interim and was eventually named the head coach. Boise State did finish 8-6 and won the Mountain West championship over UNLV before losing to UCLA in the LA Bowl. Helani graduated after the season, and Jeanty took over and put the Broncos on his back. There are definitely some fair asterisks to the Ashton Jeanty rushing yards, at least compared to Barry Sanders. Jeanty played 14 games, including the college football playoff. Barry got credit for only 11 in 1988 and still rushed for 2,628 yards. Stats from bowl games didn't count until 2002, so when Barry rushed 29 times for 222 yards and 5 touchdowns in the Holiday Bowl against Wyoming, it didn't count to his season yardage. The carries are a better stat to base off. Barry had 344 carries, not counting the bowl. Jeanty had 374 carries. It was clear for a while that Ashton Jeanty could make history, but he did come up short at 2,601 yards, only 27 yards away from breaking the all-time record held by Barry Sanders. The offensive line has helped, but it's been Jeanty. He had 1,964 of those yards after contact. He sits at second all-time for rushing yards in a season, but he was fourth headed into the CFP. Sanders rushed for 2,628 yards at Oklahoma State in 1988. Melvin Gordon rushed for 2,587 yards at Wisconsin in 2014, and Kevin Smith rushed for 2,567 yards at UCF in 2007. It's well known what Barry did at Oklahoma State. It did win him the Heisman, unlike Jeanty. Barry is in the College Football Hall of Fame and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It helps that he carried how good he was at Oklahoma State to the next level in Detroit. His number 21 is retired at Oklahoma State and number 20 for the Lions. Barry won Offensive Rookie of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year twice, and MVP in the NFL. He is one of the best, and he did it despite not being very big, just like Ashton Jeanty. Two guys who dominated at the college level, and Jeanty should do the same in the NFL after he gets drafted in the first round too. Barry and Jeanty have been a topic all season, but those seasons from Melvin Gordon and Kevin Smith were incredible too. I wasn't alive for Barry, but I remember Melvin Gordon at Wisconsin. He was a beast. On top of 2,587 yards, he had 29 touchdowns on 343 carries and had 19 catches for 153 yards and 3 touchdowns. He didn't win the Heisman Trophy. Melvin finished second behind Marcus Mariota at Oregon. As for Kevin Smith at UCF, I don't remember him, but I can't believe he carried the ball 450 times. The previous record was only 405 by Marcus Allen at USC. He didn't have an insane average per carry at 5.7, but he had so many chances. He picked up 2,567 yards and 29 touchdowns. He caught 24 passes for 242 yards and a touchdown. Smith was the offense for the Knights. He was a consensus All-American and did get 3 first-place votes, but finished 8th. For what it's worth, nobody was beating Tim Tebow in 2007, and it didn't help that UCF was playing in the CUSA at the time. Getting to watch history being made or chased is a pleasure. It's one of the most fascinating things in sports to me. Watching Aaron Judge pass Roger Maris for the American League home run record, or seeing Alex Ovechkin chase down Wayne Gretzky for the NHL goals record. It's awesome, and it promotes the past. There is a lot more talk about Barry Sanders and remembering what he did at Oklahoma State now, even as far as remembering what Melvin Gordon did. I didn't really know who Kevin Smith was before Ashton Jeanty went on a tear. Getting to watch him dominate was a bright spot all season. I was too young to remember when Boise State beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Day 2007, but I've seen the highlights so many times. It was iconic, and now Ashton Jeanty has brought Boise State back to the spotlight. Fans were staying up and tuning in to watch Ashton Jeanty play late every Saturday. What he accomplished will not be forgotten for a long time, and now it's time to see what Ashton Jeanty can do as a pro. At every point this season, I think he made it pretty clear he has what it takes to be good at the next level.